Hi lovely people! Just to start the video off, I'm going to apologise if this is weirdly pink. I did a test record and it came out really pink and I don't know why, because nothing is different than normal. So if this is distractedly pink, I'm sorry. On to the matter at hand. This week's video is another book review.
Sophie Vlogs.
I wanted to talk about a book series that I have been really enjoying recently, and the first book of which is Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. This was actually lent to me because I commented upon it initially because I love the title, I think it's fantastic, and it made me laugh, which this book as a whole has also done. This is the first book of a series of which I'm pretty sure there are about 6 currently available. I think there's a new one coming out soon. I am just starting the 4th book currently. This video is just going to focus on the first book in order to be spoiler free, although at the end I will include a couple of trigger warnings which are going to be a bit spoilery, but I feel like they do need to be included. So that's where we're at. So what is this book about? Just One Damn Thing After the Other is essentially time-travelling historians. Take a moment, consider the awesomeness of that, appreciate the awesomeness of that, go out and buy the book because it's great, it delivers on that. So, the series all focuses around this institute called St Mary's, which is located in England. So the essential start point is time travel is possible. It's not a widely publicised fact, but this institute has the means by which they can time travel. The reason that the institute exists in the first place and all that sort of stuff is explored throughout the book series, and I'm not really going to talk about that, but essentially they go back in time, they visit specific events, they often have a reason for being there. For example, there's a big corporation which also knows about time travel and will occasionally commission them to go back to a certain point and discover X, Y or Z, and then they use that and they find a way to make it public knowledge without acknowledging the fact that they found out through time travel. So it has a really interesting setup to begin with, and the series focuses on our main character called Maxwell, and she is a historian, and it's about her being recruited by St Mary's and training, and then the missions she's going on, and all of the kerfuffles that arise as a result, because she is a little bit of a danger magnet. As the name of the book would suggest, just one damn thing after another, so much happens. Things do not ever go to plan, essentially. Even if plans are made, they are swiftly thrown out the window. All hell breaks loose all the time in this book, which is both a positive and a negative to the series, I think. On the one hand, 4 books in, I am loving the amount of stuff that happens. It's fast-paced, it's constantly developing, they explore such a wide range of historical times, and there's always something happening. On the other hand, towards the end of the first book, I did have a moment where I was sat thinking to myself, oh my god, could it just go right for once? I don't know whether it's just because I'm 4 books in and I've adjusted to that now and I'm used to it, or if it is that as it's gone on, she's got better at writing it so that stuff still happens but you don't feel overwhelmed, because there were a couple of points in the first and second books where I did feel slightly overwhelmed with just how much had happened. I think there are 2 main reasons why I'm really enjoying this series. Number 1 is the fact that I do really like history. I am a little bit of a history nerd, so I really like exploring all the different times that we're taken to in this. There are ones that I have prior knowledge to, and there are ones where I'm sort of learning a little bit of history as a result of the book, which I like. The second thing I really like about the series is the humour of it. As you probably can already tell from the title, there's a light-heartedness to this. Not necessarily in the subject, because a lot of stuff happens, it doesn't pull punches, there are a number of fatalities at the point where I'm at, quite a few people have died. But at the same time, because of her writing style, she's always injecting it with humour, and it's just casual comments that Max makes from time to time. They just make you smile, even though you're in the midst of, like, horror and everything's gone wrong. But she's, like, joking, and you're like, yeah, this is still fun, like, yeah. I also really like the role that history kind of has to play in this, because it's not so much of a passive thing that they go back and view. History sort of is like an entity in this. So for example, early on it's established, if you go back in time and you try and change something that is supposed to happen, history will essentially find a way to sort of bump you off to get you out of the way, to stop you from changing what needs to happen. History wants to maintain the timeline. It doesn't want the disruption. So that's a really interesting element, and that comes into play quite a bit. And I'm really enjoying that role. Obviously, as soon as you have time travel, you're opening the whole kettle of fish where it's like paradoxes and maintaining timelines, and I like that this actively engages with, like, historians aren't allowed to go to years which they've already been to, because then they would already be there and they'd be screwing up timelines. And I like that attention to detail, where it doesn't just use it as a plot device, it does seem to be slightly thought through and becomes like a feature in it. I have one sort of criticism, which isn't like a huge criticism. I don't even know if it's a criticism. I think it's probably just a difference between me and the character in this book, because sometimes the character in her relationships with people, specifically there's like a specific relationship I'm thinking about, but spoilers, she sort of goes from extremes of emotions and completely like changes her opinions on things and goes back and blah 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 blah. I think at times I felt like maybe the characterization of certain people was inconsistent. But at the same time, I don't know whether I feel like it's inconsistent characterization, or I think maybe I'm just a little bit too much, like I'm quite a, I feel like I'm going to cringe when I say this, I'm quite a chilled out person. So I think sometimes when there are characters in books that are incredibly passionate and have very wild emotions and stuff, I think maybe sometimes I don't find it super believable, because that's just not how I am. Whereas if I was like that, maybe it's actually perfectly decent characterization, and it's in keeping, I don't know, this... So it's not like a huge criticism is what I'm saying, it's just like a thing that I sort of felt because I'm a little bit different from the people in the book. But, you know, it didn't get in the way of my enjoyment. There were just a couple of moments where I was like, really guys? Really? Tone it down. Have a cup of tea. Come back to it in the morning. It'll be fine. There are a bunch more things that I could say about this series that I think I'm going to hold off from saying, because I don't want to enter spoiler territory. I very much want this to be an introductory teaser to maybe tempt you to check them out, rather than like an in-depth discussion of the content. But essentially, if you like books that deal with history, if you like books that also deal with time travel, one book that this really made me think of was The Invisible Library. So it's like The Invisible Library, but if you took away the steampunk and like the crocodiles and stuff that happened in that book. But it's like of a similar vein, and it made me think of that. If I had to give like a quick summary of the book, it's a very funny, fast-paced book about historians that time travel. And if any of that is your cup of tea, then I would definitely recommend you check it out. I would give it a solid 3.5 out of 5, verging on a 4, that sort of a bracket. So like above average but not absolute perfection sort of level. This is the tiny spoilery moment, because I'm just going to mention some trigger warnings. Just specifically for the first one, there is a number of moments where characters are sexually assaulted, and it doesn't really come up again in the rest of the series. It's just in the first book there are a few instances of that, which if that is a thing that you don't want to deal with, then maybe either skip ahead to the second book and pick it up, or just ignore it. There is also quite a high body count in this, so if you literally just want a light-hearted read, maybe don't do this, because it's quite fast-paced and gripping. You can get a little bit adrenaline-y when you're reading it, because you're like, oh my god, what is happening? Everyone is going to shit. That's, yeah. But they're so gripping. Like, I've read like 4 in 2 weeks, so that's where I'm at with my life. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this book review. If you've read the series, then I would really love to talk to you about it. If you haven't read the series, then I would definitely recommend you check it out if it seems like your cup of tea. And if you'd just like to talk to me about books in general, then always welcome to do so. I hope you're having a super duper lovely day, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.